I'm going to introduce Mike Bowes, who's going to bring some greetings. And Mike, you're muted.
Good evening. It's so nice to see everybody participating in tonight's workshop. I will only be here for a few minutes because I am actually still working. So enjoy, take to heart what the ladies have to offer, and remember when you're doing applications for grants with SurreyCares, less can be more. Keep it simple, keep it direct and forthright. And thank you all for participating and the work that you do in the community. As time goes on, your work will become more and more important to the community and the people struggling within our community. So thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Mike. All right, so Romy's going to pop up a few slides just to help us out. We'll just kind of introduce you to the agenda for this evening. And we can go right to the next slide, Romy, please. There you go. All right, so today what we want to do is give you a little bit of an overview of our grants process and some changes to the grant criteria. We're going to talk about the timelines, give you a few tips for how-tos, and a few tools, and then have time for question and answer. Romy, if you can flip to the next slide, please. Of course, before I begin, I did want to acknowledge that our office is on the shared and unceded traditional territories of the Fraser Salish people, including the Kwantlen, the Katzie, the Kakite, the Semiahmoo, and the Tsawwassen people. And we're also very grateful to the Indigenous people who have cared for these lands since time immemorial. And we want to acknowledge the many Inuit and Métis people with whom we share this lovely land. Next slide, please, Romy. For those of you who are new to us, and I can't see all of you on the screen there, just always like to review our mission. Next slide, please. We'll send you slides afterwards as well, so you don't have to worry. If it's on the slide, we'll give that to you, but we will give you some secret tips for showing up tonight. In the grant application process, you will see reference to the values and principles of SurreyCares. And so we really want to draw attention to that on the bottom line there in particular. Diversity, collaboration, trust, growth, accountability, and integrity. So really important if you can align your applications with those values. And we'll talk more. There are fields for some of those, in particular diversity and collaboration. And so just to be aware of those. So a few things that are new to us, as always, SurreyCares is what we refer to as a mid-sized community foundation serving a large and fast-growing community with, as you know, complex social issues. So we're a bit constrained in terms of what we can do. And while we're growing, we are constantly advocating and applying for external sources of funding that can provide additional support to the community. So I see a number of familiar faces online. I know many of you received funding from Emergency Community Support Fund. This last week, we announced some healthy community grants that were derived from federal dollars. And we are continuing to apply for additional sources of funding. We don't have anything firm, but as you know, these things come up quickly when they arrive, and we do think that there's some additional support coming with the kind of continuing extension of COVID, that there will be more dollars available. So please keep an eye on our website. If you're not already signed up, please join us on our social channels or sign up from our website for the newsletter, and that way you'll make sure that you're in quickly. If you didn't, I think most of you, because you're here, are receiving the blasts for not-for-profits. But if you heard through other channels, maybe reach out to us or leave a note in the chat if you think you're not on our not-for-profit blast list, because we always send that news out quickly. So a couple of other updates from SurreyCares. Last year, if you're not aware, 6 new funds were created with us. And what that does is it grows the ability for us to make grants for broader categories than maybe we have in the past, and to go deeper. So with strong financial performance on the endowments in the last year and continuing donations, we're seeing some ability to make changes this year. We will be making $70,000 in grants from this stream that we're talking about this year. Last year, that was 59,000, and the year before it was 33,000. So we are growing. We're not quite keeping pace as well as we would like to, but we're doing the best we can to be able to support you. I think a few other things that I wanted to add is that a thank you to those of you. I know that submitting grant reports for those of you who received funds last year sometimes feels like a bit of work, and we're able to use those impact statements that you provide to actually help donors understand what the not-for-profits in Surrey are doing and the importance of giving so that we can support you with grants. So it's kind of a reciprocal process, and you're really part of that. We're all doing this together, so thank you. Next slide, please. Oh, and sorry, if you're not already getting the notices, we've just sent out a reminder today that our next NPO meeting is in April. So please join us if you're available and interested in networking. In those sessions, we usually have lots of time for you to share with one another, and that's important. Today, I'm just going to talk at you rapid fire until we get to questions. The other thing that I wanted to add is that this past year, we did see a number of our donor advised funds actually ask us for assistance in identifying grant recipients. And what that meant was, even though we were very oversubscribed for our pool of granting funds, some of you received a letter that said, sorry, not this year. And then you received another letter that said, we were able to take your application and move it over and have some other funds applied. So we'll do our very best to support you through whatever means we have available to us. Okay, Romy, next slide, please. I think many of you are familiar with this visual. Equity, you'll hear about a lot, and you'll see it in our application form. As a foundation, we've really been trying to focus on equity in the community and ensuring that as a funder, we are helping to support equity in the community. And that means across organizations and those who are being served. And so that's really important for us. And to that end, SurreyCares has recently signed the Philanthropic Community's Declaration of Action, and that results to the Truth and Reconciliation Committee recommendations. And so we're trying to embed equity in that perspective as well. Next slide, please, Romy. Okay, so a few things that we want to just raise for you. As we've really worked at embedding your feedback, we've been listening to you as organizations, as you've come together and met with us, spoken to us in our not-for-profit meetings, and we've continually been gathering input. We also have a community advisory committee that's been assisting us with giving us advice, and they've given us some feedback on our granting process. And so what you'll hear about tonight is really the result of those discussions over the past year. The board and the granting committee has worked very hard to try to figure out the best path forward, and we're on a journey. So we might not have been able to do everything, but we hope that you will see the changes that you've asked for reflective. One of the things that has changed this year is that one of our granting streams is going to be increased to a $10,000 maximum, and that's the special needs stream. As you may know, for as long as SurreyCares has been in existence, we're now in our 28th year, our grants have ranged from $1,000 to $5,000. So this year we are able to stretch with one of our funds a little bit further. What I ask grant applicants to do is to only take what you really need. If you don't need more dollars, please don't request them, because other organizations may need those funds. With the increase in the grant size, that means we will very likely possibly be making less grants overall, even though the dollar amounts can be larger. So last year we made a total of 21 grants in this stream. This year, if people ask for the maximum, our community grants will give or take 5 grants. If everyone applies for $10,000 level grants in special needs, we'll have, again, 4 grants. Our youth fund was 15 times oversubscribed last year. And so, you know, if only the max is requested, there will be 1 grant awarded in that category. So just to give you a sense of where we're at. And it was a really tough decision for us, but we know that some organizations need more support to do the work that they're doing. And so we did want to give some latitude to an increased grant size this year. A few things that we really encourage you to do is to consider the reviewers when you're submitting your applications, whether that's in the portal in writing, or whether this year you're choosing to do a verbal or a video or some other form of creative application. And also to be aware of where the grant funds come from. These funds were dedicated and donated by generous local donors who care very deeply about the community. And if you click on the 3 categories on our website, it will take you to the page where the fund information is held. So it's really useful to go in and read before you start filling this out what the intent was that the donor specified for that fund. So special needs in particular is not just any special needs. It has a vocational kind of focus. It fits very nicely with mental health. And so just read each fund that you're thinking about applying for and make sure that you fit in the right category and apply within the right category. We also already spoke about the values. Nothing about us without us. Again, as we try to get to a place of equity, we want to ensure that programming, as much as possible, is led by those who are impacted most directly. I will say very frankly, if you say that you're not led by or engaging deeply with the individuals affected by your programming, you probably won't make it for review by the committee. So if there's some reason why you absolutely can't consult the individuals or include them in your leadership and program design, make sure you make that rationale very clear in your application, because we really are looking for individuals who are most deeply engaged with those that they're serving. I think some of this is fairly self-explanatory. We do obviously like our grant applicants to try to be sustainable or be growing to be sustainable. So organizations, and I don't think there are any of you online perhaps tonight, if you've received funding for the same project for 3 years, your application won't be considered. Now, that doesn't mean an organization can't continue to apply, but apply with a different project. But we're really trying to support the entire community. So if we only were to support one program every year with limited resources, we really don't serve the entire community. Okay. I think, as I've said, we generally are oversubscribed. In addition to youth being 15 times oversubscribed, our community funds were 5 times oversubscribed. And we know that these are tough times, as we're still, for many of you, struggling through volumes coming out of COVID and all the extra expenses. So we know this is challenging. As always, some of you are charity fund holders. That is another vehicle for you to kind of develop a sustainable sense of funding, is to create a charity fund with us. And that way, organizations like Elizabeth's here from Unity, they have a designated fund that each year receives a grant from us, because that particular fund is created to make grants directly to that organization. And we have about 30 of those funds. So that's just another way to secure some assets each year that you can count on. And of course, you can add us to your to our philanthropic directory if you're not there. Next slide, please, Romy. So a few changes this year. As some of you know, last year was the first year that we considered staffing dollars as part of the application. This year, you can also include equipment, infrastructure, and capacity building within your application. We heard loud and clear that that's really important. So that's new for us this year. Do we have any not-for-profits on the line who are not registered charities? Maybe just put your hand icon up. I'll just try to scroll. I'm not seeing everyone. No, doesn't look like it. I think you're all charities. We do accept applications from not-for-profits if they have an agreement in place with a registered charity. If that is the case for your organization, please reach out to us as soon as possible, because there are some extra steps that you need to go through, and it's definitely not something that you're going to be able to accomplish if you just start at the last hour. And again, this year for organizations, we know that not all organizations are strong in grant writing skills, and some come from a more oral tradition. So this year, we are open to having video presentations or site visits, if that's appropriate, to assist in that process. Our job is really to support you in succeeding. We want to help the best projects move forward. And so if we can assist and you need an alternative form other than going to the portal and filling out the more traditional grant application, please reach out to Lynn. Her email is in the package, and we'll introduce you to Lynn a little bit later to talk about that. And the same will apply for evaluation reports, that we can do those in other formats if that helps. Another thing that's different this year, I won't say it's new, but we're just trying to promote it a little bit better, is that we have a Surrey Minor Softball Fund, and applications can be made for those grants. It would be a fairly small grant of up to, I think it's about $900 is available. So if there's anyone here that's looking to do something with regards to softball, we do have a different process for that, and you can reach out to us directly. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything that's really important. And from time to time, we may move applications from one stream to another, just based on availability of funding. So if we find we've got less applications in one category and there are dollars sitting on the table, if we've got an application someplace else, we'll try to move it so that we can expend all of the dollars. So we'll really do everything that we can to make sure that you're able to be successful. All right. So our priorities for 2022, and these may change annually. We're just trying to make this more clear for organizations what we're focusing on. We've heard loud and clear from organizations that mental health is a really big concern. As the larger government funds dried up that were providing COVID support, there was a real feel that there was a need for continued mental health support. Now, we will look at that in whatever way you choose to define it. You know, health promotion cases can be made, can come from many different kinds of programs and supports. So you can feel free to define that as you see fit. As I said, we are looking at capacity development for local NPOs. And that may mean things like if you need staff training, or we know that some organizations are still coming out of COVID, struggling with technology needs, those sorts of things. You can certainly include those in your grants. I will say that because this is our first year of this and we don't have a particular capacity fund stream that you can check off in the applications, just choose the most appropriate place. I think on our form, it refers more to the traditional language, but if your project is mental health related and it seems to fit in special needs and capacity development, that's okay. Just put it in the place where it seems to fit best. And of course, we're looking for grants that provide benefit to underserved populations in Surrey. We know that not all organizations have benefited equally to funding opportunities. And so we really want to try to create some equity. And we have heard feedback that there's a desire to make sure that some of the smaller organizations, the local organizations, are receiving funds. And again, that if they're led by those served, that's ideal. Okay, next slide, please, Romy. So some timelines. Our portal opened yesterday, and our apologies for the delay. We're trying to streamline our own software. And so we were seeing if we could try a new granting software. So we're working on some refinements, but the portal is now open. The applications close at noon on Friday, April 29th. And there is a review process then. Our reviewers are volunteers who come from within Surrey and bring kind of breadth and diversity to our application process, and they're very familiar with the needs of the community. So they do a very in-depth look at the applications. There's lots of discussion. And then those applications moved forward will be approved by the board on June 20th. And our goal will be to have notification of grant status out by June the 30th. One of the other pieces of feedback that you've given us is that you'd like the opportunity for feedback if applications are unsuccessful. So certainly we're open to that. Next slide, please. All right, so a few things that relate to grant applications, whether they're verbal or in writing. And we can send you the link to this article. We just thought it was really good. Again, is to consider the reviewer. If you can take time, and I know this may seem basic and some of you are very seasoned grant writers, some of you may be newer, to really get started early and take time to have multiple sets of eyes review your application before you send it in. Our reviewers get a lot of applications to read. As Mike mentioned, sometimes less is more. Make sure it's really clear and crisp, and that it's easy to understand by someone who might not know your organization as well, or the jargon. Obviously following the directions. We have a lot of applications, surprisingly, where people tick off that they're not collaborating with others, which is one of our values. So make sure that you're actually articulating that, because we know that you're partnering with others. And that really is important when we're so lean, to be able to say, we know that this organization isn't trying to duplicate what someone else is doing. They really are working collaboratively. Again, start as soon as possible so that you've got the best chance to put in a strong proposal. We suggest highlighting your strengths as opposed to your needs. Again, involving those you serve in the design of your programs, and that will really shine through in your applications. And you can, read successful grants. It's a great way to get some examples of what's been successful. You can actually look at some grant stories on our website as well, as if that's helpful to see what kinds of projects and applications were successful last year. And I think really demonstrating that you have designed the most cost-effective solution possible is really great. We have some applicants who apply for $1,000 grants, and they do everything so leanly and are completely volunteer driven. And it's always great to see those applications who can do so much with so little. But if you're needing costs, make sure you explain it. I think in the application process, we usually have a couple of accountants mixed into our applications. They'll go straight to the budgets. And if you haven't been able to put into your material why you're asking for something that appears to be more expensive, such as the most expensive of the Zoom software packages, I know there are reasons for that, but if the reviewers don't understand, they're likely not going to look at that as strongly. So again, if you are doing something that looks like it's not the least expensive or the most cost effective, make sure you explain what that is. There may be very good reason, but don't assume that we know. And I think be persistent. Each time you submit an application to us, we get to know you and your organization and the needs in the community. We do analysis. And sometimes it's a matter of being able to give you feedback. If an application comes in early and we think it's not as strong as it might be, if we're early, we have a chance to work with you and say, let's revise that so it has a better chance. And sometimes we'll be able to say, this just isn't the right fit for this year, but we'll know it's a need for next year if we don't have enough dollars to go around. So please don't take it personally if your grant project, even if it was a fabulous project, was not successful. We get a lot of great projects every year. There are very few that are not strong proposals. And it's probably the first thing that our reviewers say to us when they're new and first time as part of the process is like, wow, this is really hard. We have to say no, because they come in thinking it's going to be great. We get to give away money. And then they go, wow, there are all these needs and all these great projects and we can't fund them all. So we'll send you the link to the more detailed article if you're interested in that. Oh, and Romy, I guess you're in control there. So I need you to flip the slide for me, please. All right, so at this point, I think I have spoken enough. And I'm going to turn you over to Lynn and Romy, who are going to just talk through a couple of key points on the application portal for those of you who are filling out the more traditional application form.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Romy.
Okay, so for the application process, well, to apply, it's very simple. You should just visit our website and go to the grants page. The link to that would be on the top right corner. And after going to the grants page, you would be redirected to the page. And if you scroll just a little bit down, there would be an option that says 2020 grant applications are now open, and there would be a red button. And if you click on that, you would just directly be transferred to that grants page. And after that, I'll just share the current grants page with you guys. Sorry, just give me a second here. And yep, just like I was saying before, if you go here and then click on grants, scroll a little bit down, and 2020 grant applications. And in here, as you can see, we have in detail explain the entire process on how you can fill it out and what are the needs for the application, as well as what are the don'ts are, the process and the timeline that we have provided in the presentation before is also mentioned in here, as well as the requirements that the grant committee review would go through to accept that application. And at the bottom of the page is the application itself. We have also included a downloadable PDF file for the application. Now, one thing that we should mention is that this PDF file is only to view, just so you know what the things are before you want to apply. And after you have viewed the application form, you have to fill it out online through this portal that you would find at the bottom of the page. Now, in this portal, there will be mandatory fields, so you cannot go through this portal next page if you haven't filled out those fields. It would tell you that you're required to fill out those. And if you just put in the information, it would keep taking you through the process. And sorry. Yep. And there would be 4 pages in total. So you would have to, in this one, you would have to tell us more about what the project is, how much amount you are totally looking for, what amount is requested in the application, and if the application is successful, would the project move forward? Are you applying for a grant for another organization? Which category the application would fall in, and are you partnering with a registered charity? And as Christine mentioned earlier, this is for someone who is either partnering with a registered charity, or if there are 2 organizations that are participating, partnering together for one single project. And if you are partnering together, we would need the name of the organization and a proof of that partnership. Here you can fill out at what date the project would start and when it would end, and just the goals of your application, along with a brief statement of how it would serve the Surrey residents. And like Mike Bosa said earlier, a brief description can be good enough. And this is again more about what are the needs for the application, like how the project would be evaluated, what will the money requested in the application be used for. You would have to get a little bit specific about that. You can attach a budget later on that we would show you. And how will this project align with the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion that we have talked about? And here you can select the category, the people that would that your projects would serve. And again, how will these individuals be involved in the in your projects and decision makings? And this would be the number of residents that you have an idea of that would be served through your project. How will this success of the project will be evaluated? And any additional information that you have regarding this project can be filled out here. On the final page, you are given a checklist where you can let us know what you are attaching. We would need all these documents, and you can attach them to the file, as well as provide us an email to which we would contact you about later. And after all this, you just need to accept the terms, and then you can preview the submission, or you can save it for later if you want to go back and make any changes before you make the final submission. Sorry about that. And then you can just later on click on submit form. if you click on save later, it would just give you a link for your saved application that you would want to keep.
And just a reminder, we should probably have put a note in there, but it's a good idea to print your or save your application as a PDF before you submit it. We did have quite a few people asking for copies of what they'd submitted this year. So it'd be great if you could just make sure you save a copy of that for yourself so you've got it.
That was it for me. Lynn, would you want to add anything to that? Lynn, you're muted.
I wonder if
there we go.
Yeah.
Because we're trying something different this year, and that is in specifically relating to a site visit or a YouTube or video submission. If that is a way that you would like to go, could you please connect with me at Community Grants and give me as much lead time as I can to help you through that process? At a minimum, what I would suggest that you do is look at the application form and think about how you would maybe try to incorporate some of those questions in your video or in your site visit. That will help you frame what's in your video, right? And again, if you're looking or you know of organizations that are registered societies and not CRA designated charities, if you know of those organizations and want to refer to us, we do need time to help you find a partner on that. So again, in the spirit of apply early or reach out for help early, more than happy to lend a hand where we can. And I guess that's as much as I wanted to go through. I think everybody else is covered, and I don't want to duplicate what other people have said.
Okay, and now we would turn it over to Christine once again.
Well, I think the next slide is budgets, which Lynn may want to speak about as well, too. I think one of the comments that I would make is here in terms of, please be clear what portion of the budget will be covered by SurreyCares. And for Surrey, if any of you are serving more than one geographic area, just to make it clear which portion is Surrey. And the other is, if you have multiple pieces to your proposal and it's a larger proposal, it can be really helpful to the reviewers if you can prioritize your budget requests, so that we know what is essential. Often if we're trying to spread the dollars across and the reviewers think that they'd like to support two projects, if they can see which pieces are essential to the success of the project, that will be really helpful, because it may mean you get part of a grant, might not get everything that you asked for, but you might get something as opposed to nothing if they just couldn't figure out how to pick it apart and still have you be successful. Lynn, anything else from you on the budgets?
No, this isn't entirely related to budget, but is. So for example, if you're applying for funding for meals, and ordinarily your organization provides 1,000 meals a week, the funding that we provide isn't going to fund 1,000 meals. It may only fund 25 meals or 200 meals. So it's really important, both you identify that in your budget. And then at the end of the project, when you're submitting your evaluation, please also show us again where SurreyCares dollars were spent, and again, what we actually funded, because we like to pick those pieces of information up and amplify that and brag about what a good job your organization is doing. So it looks a bit odd if we were to say, you know, this organization, 1,000 meals a week, and we funded 1,000 meals a week, when actually that's not the case. We only funded maybe 200 meals a week. So just be careful, or I guess be clear on what it is we're funding and how much of it we're funding. And I think that's as much as I have to say on budgets that Christine didn't already cover.
All right, so I think we're about at the time where we can open it up to questions, and hopefully we've got answers for you, and if not, we'll find them. Romy, do you want to just take the slides down, because I can't see? I'd like to be able to see who's online. There we go.